The Becoming Unsilenced podcast is about awakening to the greatest potential you always were. Listen to teachings, interviews, and inspiring stories of others who have challenged the accepted, expanded possibility, and merged modern day life with ancient wisdom to discover their greatest potential. When you become fearless, you become limitless. Now be inspired by today's episode. Well, I am so excited on this episode of Becoming Unsilenced to have a mentor and coach and friend, Robin Eaton, here with me today. She runs her business as Soul Touched by Robin, and we connected about a year and a half ago through what I would say is a real power of intention led us to connect. And I'll explain about that in just a little bit more. But Robin, go ahead and introduce yourself and share a little bit about who you are.
Well, first off, I was so thrilled when you reached out and asked me to be a part of this because it's been just beautiful watching how you are serving and everything you're doing. And so I'm excited to be here. Um, I am a shaman, a coach, a teacher. They're all, wrapped into one and deeply intuitive. So that all comes together and feeds my work. I work with women to help them trust themselves so that they can trust in their intuition and create the freedom in their lives that they crave. Yeah.
Well, and that is exactly what you did for and with me during the time that we worked together. So I love how intuition moves us to the exact right thing that we need in our path. And that's how we connected, because I was in a space, I was winding down some work with one coach. I knew I needed a slightly different approach to really shoot me over the edge, kind of get me over some hurdles that I was looking for. And one day, a friend out of the blue, someone I hadn't even known very long, called me and said, "Do you want to go with me to this thing in Omaha? There is it's a fair of some type, and there is a shaman that's going to be there that I want to talk to." And I had no idea what I was agreeing to go to with her, but I pretty much said, "Yeah, I'm free. I'll go along." And you were the shaman, and we connected, and I think you did an aura reading for me, maybe. And it
Mm-hmm.
was really within 10 minutes of connecting with you, I knew that, for one, that you had seen to the core of my soul very quickly, and that you were the coach that I was going to be working with next. So it was a super cool way that we connected, and then worked together for a while, unfolding last year, and now brings us to the topic that we're going to talk about today, which is slowing down to speeding so you can speed up. And yeah, we had a conversation in early December where I was at a space in my life where all of a sudden a bunch of things had come to a stop, and I was headed out on a 10-day vacation with my kids. And you had challenged me that it was the time for me to slow down in order to speed up. And that wisdom I've lived that wisdom the last 6 months. And so I wanted for you to be able to share what that concept means. And let's then explore it and have a conversation about it.
I love it. Well, going back even to how we met, I think is a beautiful illustration of slowing down to speed up. If you hadn't set your work aside that day and accepted that invitation, right? If you hadn't gotten out of your normal workaholic habits,
Yep.
we wouldn't have met, right? But it was the slowdown. It was the, yes, I'll do something different today. I'll slow things down. I'll set this aside that created the synchronicity that brought us together so that you could continue to develop and move along your path. And that's what this is. It's the formula for flow. For I call it the formula for flow, for how to get into that creative space, that space that allows us to really blossom. Um, and you have to slow down. You have to slow down to speed up, because if you imagine it, it's like you're hurtling down the highway at 100 miles an hour, right? You're on cruise control, but even on cruise control, you can't. When you're going 100 miles an hour, your focus is like this. You can't look around you because you're going so fast. You need to see if anything pops in your way, right? If you don't, the only way, so when you're going that fast, you can't even see the other options that are around you. You're blind to it because you've got this tunnel vision going on, and all you can see is what's directly in front. If you slow down, then you can start to look around, right? I can start to see the scenery off of here. I can look and see that, oh, maybe there's a turn, or there's an option, or there's something I'd like to check out. But we have to slow down to get into that space. And that, it seems counterintuitive, right? Because we have goals, we have things we want to accomplish, we places we want to go. And so you'd think that it's just drive harder, but it's not. We have to slow down. And there's science behind that. There's a formula. Um, I love that there's simple science that explains all of these big concepts, and that kind of flows into the intuitive world. There's a formula for kinetic energy, and it's mass times velocity squared divided by 2, right? So if we think about that, we think about our car that's running down the highway at 100 miles an hour. If we want to make a turn, if we don't like the direction we're heading, or we want to do something really extraordinary, right? We have to shift our trajectory. So we have to start to curve off. And if we do that too fast, we're going to crash. And if
We're
we
going to
do
shoot
it,
right on over the edge and into the tree, right on the other
right,
side.
right, like it's just, you're going to crash and it's going to be ugly, and you know, um, and so you have to slow down to take a curve. You have to slow down if you want to shift something in your life. If you want to create something new, you have to slow down first. And then you can pick your speed up again. It's like driving, trying to take a curve. You take that curve too fast, you shoot right off the edge. And you may
Yes,
not
exactly.
recover from that.
Yeah, that's so wise. And I saw in my own life where I had these like repeating cycles of workaholism that kept me going at this frantic pace. And I could see that. But what I didn't see underneath it was that was coming almost as a trauma response to this fear of money. And we worked together a lot on money and my relationship with money. And that really helped me see that the workaholism was tied into that. And once I could see that, it helped me make complete sense that it was okay to slow down. And then, of course, life presented that opportunity to me to slow down a little bit. And I know from a class that you did earlier, that I was part of, there was a note that I had that says, either your spirit will slow you down, or your spirit will slow you down.
Exactly. It's, when we're going too hard, too fast, when we're stuck on that 100-mile-an-hour track, when we're stuck in fight flight, because that's really what that is. When we're not looking around, we're really in a fight flight. We're acting more from a place of fear. I'm afraid of what's going to happen if I slow down, if I don't keep charging forward, right? That's the money story that we get tied into. Like, I have to keep doing this. Um, you exhaust your body.
Yeah.
Like, it's fatiguing, and your body, your spirit will step in and give you a reason to slow down. Now, I would rather hit the brake myself than get sick or break a leg or something even more dire that forces me to slow down. But I've certainly been in those situations where I wasn't paying attention, and I remember going through a 2-year period where I had 3 knee surgeries back to back, and talk about a forced slowdown. It was
Yeah.
really, but it was necessary because I wasn't doing it myself. So the spirit steps in, the body steps in, and then you have to slow down. And it's during those slowdowns that the awarenesses can come forward, that you can find your own insight, that you can start to unravel your own stories, because we all have stories, and a lot of our stories were never ours to begin with. They're stories that we learned growing up, that we learned from society, that we learned from our parents, that we learned from outside of us, and they don't match what our spirit is telling us, but we
Yeah,
cling to those stories.
talk to us a little bit about that, because I know that you distinguish between destiny and fate.
Yeah. So fate are all those stories we grow up with, right? So essentially there are 4 lines of fate, right? There's a physical, a mental, emotional, there's the stories, the mythical, and then the spiritual. And these lines of fates are things like, if we look at our spiritual line of fate, that is the religion that you were born into. I mean, think about it. As a little kid, you didn't choose your religion. You're born into a family that already has established spiritual religious beliefs. And then those are taught to you, and you are raised within that. Things like physically, where did you grow up? Did you grow up in poverty? Did you grow up in a safe neighborhood? Um, mentally, emotionally, like, what's the love story that you grew up with? What did you see from your parents? What were you fed in through cartoons and stories, right? Like Cinderella and Snow White. The stories I grew up on all said, if you just work hard, if you just smile and take whatever comes your way, at some point there's a prince who's going to sweep in and save you from all of it, and you won't have any
Save
more
the
cares or
day.
worries, and life will be happy, right? There's some prince is going to come save the day, and that's your purpose, is to wait for your prince. Well, that doesn't really match up with the reality that I've lived in.
Right.
And it
You
keeps,
haven't
and
found your
that
glass slippers
story.
yet that fit?
No, I have not found the glass slipper. And yeah, exactly. No Prince Charming came and bestowed the kiss that woke me from the dream, right? Um but it's so important, because that's part of the slowdown process, is to slow down and look at, what do I believe at my core? Where did it come from? And is that really mine? Is that what does my when I sit and I go inside and I connect with my soul, my spirit, is that what my spirit tells me? Does my spirit really tell me that I'm supposed to spend every waking moment working hard to earn a dollar? Or does
Mm,
my spirit want to enjoy life?
yeah. So this
Is my spirit more
also
about, yeah,
goes to values.
completely goes to values, right? Values is one of the things that you and I worked on because, and it's something that I take most of my clients through because it was so meaningful for me the first time that I looked at my own values. So often, what
Yeah.
we think we value is not what we actually value.
And I want to make a distinction here because the value setting process that you did with me and that I've kind of adapted now to use with my clients was much different than any other value setting process I had been through, because I think most other value setting processes that I've been through come from an analytical or head space where you're trying to determine from your head, I think this is what I value. So, how does your process differ from that?
We go into the heart and we ask what your heart and your soul values. Because my head tells me that I want to feel safe and secure, right? My head tells me that I want certain things. But but when I dive into my heart, I dive into my truth and I get out of my ego, right? Because the ego is fed these lines of fate, the stories that society tells us. Our destiny is different. So fate is the book that's written for us, right? We essentially we come into life with two books, one that's already written and one that's blank. Your destiny is the blank book. The destiny is the one that you get to write. But in order to write that book, you have to first see, oh, I'm living this other book that's already pre written. And what do I like about it? And what do I not like about it? So that I can change it and write my own story. And that's the process of getting out of your head and into your heart and finding what you truly, truly value. Um, and I have never once done values from the heart with someone where money ended up on that list.
Yeah. In fact, you know what?
Never.
Interestingly, I have my list right here in my notes that we worked on. And the top three things for me was nourishing my soul, honoring my soul's happiness, and the love of the people around me. And yeah, so that's interesting there. Now, you were mentioning this idea about understanding your history, understanding where you're at, but not taking that as like your life stamp. And that kind of, to really bring it to like a specific example, it's like saying, well, the genetics in my family say that I'm going to develop diabetes. So that's there's nothing I can do to control that. Genetics say that's what's going to happen. But what you're saying is that might be your fate, but destiny means you can make different choices to influence the outcome.
Absolutely. You know, if I wasn't born with it, I created it, right? So if I wasn't born with diabetes, if diabetes is a later onset kind of thing in my family, that means it's created at some point. And that means I can avoid it. I can change it with diet and exercise and living a different lifestyle. Maybe really enjoying the sweetness and the nectar of life so that I'm not looking for the sweetness and the nectar in my food and my drink,
Yeah,
right? And that
exactly. More
doesn't mean
from
that I don't get to
mindset.
enjoy. Yeah, it doesn't mean you don't get to enjoy food and drink, but it means that you're finding that sweetness in everyday like living, like truly living. And I think most of us exist. We avoid death. We don't truly live. Living is a heart space, is a soul space. It's not up here. Up here we exist. Up here we survive. We pay our bills and we do the things and we do what we're told to do and we follow the rules. My heart has different rules, right? And I think it's that's so that's again, it goes back to the slow down to speed up. What is it that I truly want out of life? What is it that I truly value out of life? And now I can build a life in alignment with that instead of continuing in conflict with that, right? It highlights the conflicts so that I can then start to shift. I know which direction to shift to, which curve to take, right? Instead of blindly just taking turns here and there and hoping that I come across something that I like. This helps give that clarity to where you're going. But you got to slow down.
So one of the phrases that I heard you say in the flow class that you taught earlier was rearrange the letters in reactive. And
Yes.
that rearranges to what?
So when we're reactive, right? We're reacting to everything that happens outside of us. That's when we're going 100 miles an hour. But when we slow down and we rearrange those letters, we get creative. Same letters, different word, different outcome, right? Creative is when we can create the life we want. We can create our path. We can create our stories. You're the author of every story. So if you don't like the story you're living, write something new. Write yourself a new script, right?
And
But
that just
again, we have to get
incidentally,
out of that reactive.
yeah, and
Go
rewriting
for
that
it.
story, it goes to also rewriting our memory of the past too, because memories are just one interpretation of how we experience something. And if there was 10 people standing watching the same event, you can guarantee there's 10 different memories of how it happened.
Yes, yes. So that I love that you brought that up because it's such a key component. The facts are the facts, right? Facts have no emotion attached to them. Facts have no story attached to them. This happened. So when we can go back and look at the past and be the observer is unemotional. The observer isn't all caught up in stories and other things. And then we can look at it from all perspectives and we can find meaning and we can look at how we can find the gift in what happened. I don't believe anything happens by accident. I think there are reasons behind it and there are gifts in every trauma, every tragedy, every struggle we've gone through helps get us to where we are today. And in order to get out of the patterns, the loops that you were talking about earlier, we have to find that lesson because there's a gift in there that there's a teacher within that. And when we go back and rewrite those memories, we find that gift, right? We find that
Yeah.
lesson and now I can write a new story. I don't have to go through that loop again.
That lesson
I
unhooks
get out of
you.
my fate.
Yes, exactly. And
Yes.
it's what I discovered about the workaholic cycles in my own life by seeing the lesson in that. Now I can completely unhook from it. I don't need that cycle anymore to continue to act kind of as an alarm clock to awaken me to this awareness. But things repeat until we get the lesson, right?
Right. And that's where the slowdown is important because
Yeah.
when we slow down, we can study something. And study is neutral, right? When we slow down and observe and study, that's a neutral place. That, but we can't do that when we're running 100 miles an hour and we never give ourselves a chance to breathe. And breath is the core of all of life,
Yeah.
right? So just even taking a moment, like when things feel out of control and crazy, to just breathe, to just focus on your breath brings you back into the moment and helps calm your system down. Like that is the simplest way that we can slow down is to breathe.
I love
Yeah.
that you use this analogy of breath. And so without slowing down, we can't study. And the other key component here that I think was important for me anyway was to remove the self-judgment, because I had so many layers of self-judgment and criticism and why things were my fault and I didn't do enough, and if I just did that, those were all my stories that emotionally fed into things, and I needed to let go of that to be able to study, to actually see what was going on.
Yeah. To be able to slow down enough to see your own thoughts, to see how you're abusing yourself
Yeah.
is 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 essential. Is it's an essential piece, right? Because if we want to make a change, we change the way we talk to ourselves. We change, we become that observer. Like, oh, I'm having a bit of an emotion here. I'm I seem to be reacting. I think I'm feeling triggered, right? Like,
Yeah.
oh, look at me getting angry over this. What's this about? Like being able to step back and observe it like, oh, look at this. Look what's happening here. I wonder what's behind that. Because behind that is a story and a lesson.
It's one of the things I appreciated about coaching with you, because I remember you saying to me once, I'm never going to be the coach who sees an emotion come up and doesn't go deeper and explore it. And
We
that
have to
was,
dive into those.
yeah. So talk to us just a little bit more about how that plays into this slowing down to speed up.
Yeah. Your emotions are essential keys, right? Like if I was if you if it's like you've created this prison of your own, right? My my
Here goes
kitty's
your
getting in
kitty.
here. Uh, she,
Welcome to the show.
um, right? Yeah, she's like, emphasize this. uh, so it's like we create these own prisons or mazes for ourselves, right? And your emotions are the keys to the doors that you come across. And so when I'm getting upset about something, when I'm getting angry, when I'm getting sad, when I'm feeling grief, when I'm feeling shame, that's like a big neon sign that says dive in here. There's a lesson here, there's a gift here, there's something here. You have come to a moment where you can unlock a door and you can set yourself free. But we're taught in society to avoid our emotions, and emotions are uncomfortable, especially if it's happening in front of other people, right? Then we really are taught to like pull back and hide. But emotions are those keys because there's always something underneath it. there's there's thoughts that have created the emotion, and there's story behind the thoughts, and if we can unravel that thread, we can get back to your core, the core of who you are. And it's like it's almost as if you pull that one thread on the weaving, right? And the emotions are those loose threads, and the more you pull on them, the more you can unravel. And now I've got these balls of thread over here, and now I can reweave something new. But I can't
Yeah,
ever do
I
that if I
love
don't
that.
pull the thread.
So
I
do you
have to pull that thread.
yeah, you have to pull the thread. Do you think it's possible to get to a point in your life where you've really dealt with all of the wounds, all of the trauma there, and you're just really living in a place of pure potential and creativity?
Possible? Yeah, anything's possible. Um, and we're human beings, right? And so I kind of look at it like a video game, right? So you're playing level 1, and you come across the monster that somehow you have to get past, and you figure it out in level 1, and you're like, yes, hit level 2. Right now the monster shows up a little bit different, and you figure it out. And now you hit level 3. And I think that life is kind of like that. Our core traumas, our core wounds are all the same. Am I enough? Do I belong? Am I
Yeah.
lovable? This is at the core of pretty much everything. And I haven't experienced that wound in every setting. So when I walk into something fresh and new, it's like, oh, well, hey, there you are again. Still with me. But you know what? I've learned like I know how to manage you. And so now I recognize you when you come through the door, and I can invite you in and be with you instead of fighting you,
Ah,
right?
so key. I love that
So
description
so
of the levels because it's like I always use the analogy of peeling the onion, the different layers of the onion, but I like how you use this analogy of the video game because we are seeing similar monsters at each level, but from a much wiser perspective where we recognize them quicker, we know how they act now, and now we battle them, so to speak, from a much different perspective.
and it's a celebration, right? Like I leveled up,
Yeah.
right? Like, and yeah, all right, I leveled up, right? Like I'm hitting it at a whole new place. I recognize it, I see it, and now instead of like battling, like I did in the beginning, now I can welcome it with celebration and love my way through it instead of
Yeah,
fighting it and hiding from it.
I love that. So in your
Yeah.
formula for slowing down to speed up, part of that is we can reduce weight to slow down. Emotional weight also helps to, but there's this piece of, so talk to us about that in the formula. How much importance is there on lightening the load and slowing down?
Right, because it's such a key piece of the formula. I was shocked when I like played out the numbers initially. So if we play with mass and velocity, so our emotional trauma and weights and our speed, and we look at them as at the same, we give them the same value. So just for fun, we'll say they're each a 4. If I reduce my emotional trauma only, and I take that down to a 2, right? Well, let's start with, if I start with mass and velocity and I plug them both in formula at 4, I end up with 32 as my final number, right? If I reduce my emotional trauma by half and I plug in the number 2 with my speed still at 4, I can reduce that number, that final number, down to 16. Awesome, right? Like I've taken it down by half. That's huge. And that's where most of us play. Let me address that emotional trauma and ignore my speed. Let me just keep
Yeah, let's keep
100 miles an
barreling
hour.
full
And
force
let's
down the road.
let's throw things out the window, right? Like I'm going to throw stuff out the window as I'm going. And it works. It helps, right? We do get some success that way. But if we leave our emotional trauma, our emotional weight the same at a 4, but we reduce our speed by half down to a 2, the final number ends up being an 8. So now I've gone from 32 to an 8 by just slowing down. So I get so much more from slowing down than addressing the emotional weight, which shocked the heck out of me,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I would have thought it was the opposite, right? But my experience has taught me this is true. The more you slow down, the more you can see the stuff that you need to unload, right? And the more
Exactly.
I that's the, if we don't slow down, we can't even see. So then we're just blindly throwing things out the window. Well, what if we were deliberate and intentional about what we throw out the window? It makes a big difference. And if you reduce both at the same time, if you slow down and address your emotional trauma, you can take that number from a 32 down to a 4. Huge,
Yeah.
incredible. But it's really important that you stay in motion. If you stop, if you freeze, now you have no velocity, you have no energy, nothing is happening, right? We can't stop. We have to keep moving, but the slowdown is essential to getting us where we want to be.
This is two things that you said in the class I took with you. Says one is what you want is to slow down enough to tune into what you really want to do and be. And then two, build your life in a way that you don't need a vacation from it, which I love.
Exactly. Right? I love, like, who doesn't love a good vacation? But what if you didn't, what if you loved your life so much that vacation, like your whole life is essentially vacation because it's just built into what you're already doing. I mean, what we love about vacation is the slowdown.
Yeah.
Honestly, that's what we love about vacation is it's a chance to slow down, to set things aside, to have fun, to enjoy. And if you just build that into your life, you don't need a vacation from life. Now you're living. We take
Yeah.
vacations from dying, honestly. Like I just reverse the words. If I need a vacation from my life, what I'm really taking a vacation from is my soul death because my soul is dying over here if it needs to run away.
Oh gosh, yeah, you're so right. You're so right. I can see that in myself in earlier years where um, about 6 or 7 years ago, I began taking regular vacations with my kids, and we began doing these international experiences, and and I really began to crave those, and I would began taking my just going myself, week here, 2 weeks there, as much as I could carve out. Part of that I can see now in hindsight was a much needed slowdown for me for the shift that I was coming up ahead. But part of it also was this my soul was dying in the environment that it was in. And I can see that now with what you're saying. So, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it's a hard truth, right? But I believe in looking in the mirror and facing the hard truths. That's why I won't ever run from emotion. Emotion is telling me something important. And when we stuff emotions, when we pretend they're not there, when we look away from it, whatever's going on over here doesn't go away. It just gets louder. It just
yeah.
comes out in ways that we would rather it didn't. Um, so it's yeah, it's looking those hard truths in the mirror and accepting, right? I really believe in acceptance versus forgiveness. Forgiveness is this idea that we're gonna like make everything like it's like this magical, I'm gonna wave a wand and everything's okay. Well, I don't really buy into that, but I do believe in acceptance. I can accept the facts. I can accept reality. I can accept the truth. I can and then I can look at that from that observer, from that neutral position. And so I think forgiveness is a byproduct of acceptance. When I accept, okay, this happened. This was my reaction. This was this person's reaction, right? Like these facts happened and we all reacted in our own in different ways. Now I can deal with my part in that. I can own my responsibility. I can look at it. I can take my lessons from it. and now I can move forward in a manner that I want, right? Now I'm out of reaction and I'm into creation.
Creation. I love it. I love it. So, what does life look like when one shifts, takes this slowdown? And I don't think it's probably even just one slowdown. It's probably kind of a ongoing flow. But what changes when we apply this equation to our
Yeah,
life?
and I'm glad you mentioned that it's not a one-time thing, because it's not. You're creating a new habit. And whenever we create new habits, we go through a period of discomfort with it, right? So it is, and it has to be intentional, because you're creating a new habit of slowing down and of being creative, right? But when you do that, you get into this state of flow, right? You get into this place where synchronicities happen, where I'm thinking that I want a new mentor and a mentor shows up, where I start thinking like, gosh, I'd really like to do this new project and I really want to talk about this and I'd like to be on podcasts, and invitations just start flowing in, right? Synchronicities become the way of life when you really slow down and get into the flow of things. And that doesn't mean that obstacles don't don't come up. They do. But when you're in that state of being able to slow down, I can take a moment and I can study that obstacle and I can choose a course around it, and then I can go hard, and then I can go hard, right? Like then I can speed up again.
You
And so it
used it,
becomes a series of that.
yeah, you used the analogy of whitewater rafting to compare this to, where, yeah, so you bring that analogy
Yeah,
in.
when I went whitewater rafting and I learned how to do that, my instructor was he was so good because I knew nothing. But that's you know, you're getting in the river and you're going to come across different class of rapids, right? And some of them are mild and you just kind of it's like going over a few bumps, and others are like crazy terrifying, and you can really get you can get hurt, you can die in some of these conditions, right? And so you have to learn to navigate. But here's the thing, like, oh, the entire river isn't rapids. You come across periods of rapids, and as you approach them, you look, you're looking ahead for the points where you could get stuck. You're looking ahead for the obstacles. You choose a path, and once you've chosen your path, then you got to dig in to steer into into the flow that will take you that way, right? And you go with it. And if you've chosen a path that doesn't take you where you thought, you just dig in and power through it. Because that happens in life, right? Where life is like that river with the rapids that show up and don't. um and it's so important that we face our fears. So often we're so afraid of the obstacle, we're so afraid of that, you know, we're going to capsize the raft, that we don't even try. um but when we don't try, when we kind of, I call that numbing out. When we numb the pain, when we avoid the discomfort, you can't numb the pain without also numbing the joy.
Yeah, that's so
So
true.
you So when we choose not to even get in the river, like, we're choosing none of the fun, none of the exhilaration, none of the excitement, none of the like the accomplishment, like, um and and essentially we're choosing uh all of the work, all of the
Yeah,
heaviness,
all
all
the
of the, like, I'm choosing
responsibility.
not to get in the flow. Think about how much faster you can travel if you get in the river versus walking along the bank, right? But but I have to kind of study the river. I have to slow down a little bit, figure out how I'm going to get in the river and how I'm going to work with the river rather than just let the river take me away, right? Because if I let the river just take me away, it's going to throw me against the rocks and it's going to throw me into eddies, little whirlpools and things where I'm going to get stuck. And that's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking how to ride that river, how to be in that flow and ride along it and enjoy the ride, um,
Master
and
it.
to master it, to look at those obstacles and be like, this is gonna be fun, right? Instead
Yeah.
of instead to be like, all right, here it comes, and plot my course and go for it and see what happens.
Yeah. Wow.
One of the things that I really thought was fascinating when I did the whitewater rafting is every season, at the beginning of the season, all of the guides take turns being tossed out of the raft and going down with the river without it. They face their fear right up front. And then the rest of the crew, the rest of the guides go and rescue them. So they all learn how to, they all face their fears. They all, and by doing that, they also get a better feel for the river and a better feel of how to ride that river. When we, every time we face our fears, every time we jump in like that, we get a better sense of ourselves and what we can do and what we can accomplish, and it feels really good. You get closer to your center.
Yeah. And the phrase that I always use in my work is when you fear less, you become limitless. And
Yes.
I think that's exactly right. If you face those fears and you realize they really for the most part are just illusions, and you be that build that trust in yourself that you can navigate through whatever water, whatever circumstance comes up, then you really do step up and trust yourself to take bigger and bigger leaps into the unknown.
Right. And there's always a guide to help you down the river, right? Like
Yeah.
if you've not done something before, you don't have to do it alone. Find a guide,
Yeah.
right? You may not do things exactly like that guide did, but they can give you kind of the rules, the guidelines of navigation. It's like working with a coach. You know, when you sign up to work with a coach, that coach doesn't give you the answers. They help you learn to navigate your own and find the
Exactly.
answers that work for you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you want a coach who is familiar with the river that you're navigating, you know? If I'm going to go down the Amazon
Right.
River, I want a different coach than if I'm probably going to go down the Rhine River. So, yeah.
Right, because there will be similarities, but there's huge differences as well, and so that familiarity is really beneficial.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, what a great conversation that we've had today. And if someone has been listening to this and they're like, where do I even start with this? What would you suggest?
Uh, First, slow down and breathe. Like that's the easiest way to slow down. But find the little ways that you can just take a breath, slow down. You know, maybe take 5 minutes to yourself in the morning. Step away and take a lunch. Things like that are so easy. Um, and I'd love to offer anyone listening, anyone who's following Vicki, and I would love to offer you the class that Vicki is talking about, the Formula for Flow masterclass that I taught is recorded. If you reach out to me through my website,
Oh,
Soul
that'd be
Touched by
awesome.
Robin, send me a
Yeah.
message. Tell me that you heard about my class through Vicki, and I will send you the link, and you can you can have access to that masterclass. I
Oh,
think it's
that's
so
awesome.
important that we slow down, that I want everybody to know how.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and we'll put your information in the show notes for sure so they know how to reach out to you. So that is awesome.
perfect.
Well, Robin, I wind down every conversation with two questions. And the first question is, how has this work that you've been doing helped you to become unsilenced in your own life?
It's changed everything for me. Um, I was since I was a little kid, I started to silence myself, to hide who I really was. I learned to pretend that I didn't see the world that I saw, that I didn't have psychic dreams, that I didn't have this intense connection. And I hid that for so many years. And I was so miserable, suicidal. Uh, and this work, this tuning into myself, this slowing down opened up everything. Opened me up to teach classes, to share my voice, to do coaching, to be me and and not hide. It's everything. I now live in a space where I truly, honestly believe I have nothing to prove. I have nothing to defend. I have nothing to hide. I have nothing to protect. I can just be me and I can say anything I want. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't use discretion in what I
Right. And
say,
respect to,
and
yeah,
respect and kindness and love. But because I trust myself and I love myself and I like myself now, and I didn't for a long time, I can, when I do speak, I automatically speak with the love and the kindness that I show myself. It's just an extension out to others. So this word completely unsilenced me,
that is so
completely.
awesome. Well, and building on that unsilencing, how has connecting with your own inner spirit helped awaken you to your greatest potential?
Uh, I wouldn't be sitting here with you today if I hadn't connected in. You know, I spent so much of my life running away from me. When I finally stopped and slowed down and turned around and started going within and connecting in, and I truly believe that that is the source of all of our problems in this world, is it's disconnection. So when we connect, and connection has to start at home and has to start with ourselves, that connection opens up everything. I, I feel like I live a dream now. I mean, the things that I get to do every day, to play around on podcasts and have these amazing conversations, to travel and to work with people and help people find that trust in themselves, to help people go within, and the way that they go out and carry those messages, just like you are. I My whole world has unfolded in a way that, like, I don't need a vacation because I love what I do. And any day, if I decide, I can be like, you know what, it's a beautiful day, I'm gonna go do this today.
Yeah,
It's
freedom.
completely rearranged my, yeah, exactly. It's total freedom. Total freedom. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being here today and sharing your wisdom. How can people find you?
You can, my website is Soul Touched by Robin. So you can find me there. You can find me on Facebook, Robin Eaton, Eaton. And you can email me at Robin at Soul Touched by Robin. I'm also on Instagram, Soul Touched by Robin. So if you just do a search, Soul Touched by Robin, anywhere, you're gonna come across me.
Perfect, perfect. Well, thank you again for being here. It's such a great conversation to share. And so I feel like we just like every moment was action packed full of wisdom. So it's going to be one I think that people might have to listen to twice to just to even absorb all of the different things that we've talked about. So anyway, thanks for being here, and we'll see you next time, maybe on a future podcast again. So,
Ah, perfect. I would love that. Thanks for having me today. This was great.
thanks for being here. If you have a topic or question you want to hear more about, send it to us at the email below. Have an inspired day.